Canadian expats, regardless of how long they've lived abroad, can now vote. But why should they vote? Back in March, we published a video going through the registration process, and you can find that video in the link below. But just in case you've missed it, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled in January that the law preventing Canadians who had lived abroad for longer than 5 years from voting was unconstitutional. The Canadian expat had the honor of acting as an intervener in that case, so we, of course, celebrated. But today, we have the unique pleasure of speaking with one of the men responsible for the case in the first place. Jamie Duong, originally from Montreal, now living in New York, was prevented from voting in 2011. He took the federal government to court and won. Jamie, congratulations and welcome to the Canadian Expat.
Thank you, Alan. It's great to be here.
Jamie, we've won, and Canadians, regardless of how long they've lived abroad, can now vote in the next election that's looming on October 1st, but now we need to get people out there to exercise that reinstated right.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about voting, and I want to play the part of a devil's advocate because we've seen some of these arguments at play, even from some expats. So hope you don't mind.
Not at all. I welcome it.
So I guess the big question is, why should we allow Canadian expats to vote if they're not living in this country? They're not affected by our laws.
So just basic reasoning is right in the charter. It very clearly states that all Canadian citizens have the right to vote. Now, we're not compelling them to vote, but every Canadian, regardless of where they live, should definitely have that right as granted to us in the charter.
So if I'm living in some small town in the middle of Alberta or British Columbia or Ontario or Quebec, why would I want a Canadian expat to influence the outcome of my riding?
So the question's difficult because really the question is, should Canadians have a voice? And whether they're Canadians living abroad or Canadians living down the street, they're still Canadians. And if we decide that Canadians determine elections, then we have to be welcoming all Canadian voices. There are plenty of voices that any individual person might not want involved in the politics, but that's the system we have. That's democracy. And so you're going to have voices that you don't necessarily agree with, but that's what makes it a democratic country and not some authoritarian country.
Right. Okay, you've convinced me. That wasn't hard. But coming up, and now you've mentioned that, of course, we're not compelling Canadians abroad to vote, but we certainly are suggesting that they do exercise that right. We would certainly encourage them to. Why should we encourage Canadian expats to vote?
So the Canadian government, as we've seen over the past, several years, has a lot to do with trade and foreign agreements with other countries. And so a lot of decisions that are being made in Ottawa are going to be directly affecting millions of Canadians around the world with their jobs, with their education, with all things that they're doing, whether in Canada or away from Canada. The decisions of Canada affect all Canadians. And so since the decisions of Canada affect all Canadians, I believe that it is in the best interest of all Canadians to be involved in the process.
I would agree with that as well. So it must be exciting for you to have won in this particular case. It was exciting for us to be interveners in it, and although we hadn't spoken like this previously, of course, we had been involved as interveners, but super excited that it's complete and that Canadians do have the vote. You must be absolutely through the roof.
Yeah,
excited.
I mean, it's been a great victory both for democracy and for Canada. The fact that Canada had been barring Canadians from voting for so long, it's really a good thing that it's been fixed both by the Parliament and by the courts. So not only did the government changed the law in December, but the court ruling in January really helps cement those rights and make sure that a future government can't roll back those rights that we've fought for. And I couldn't have done this without our amazing lawyer, Sean O'Brien. She took the case on, and she really just delivered such compelling arguments in the courts and so much work behind the scenes. And so it was really, this victory wouldn't have been possible without her help.
So you've obviously registered already for the election?
Yep. I actually voted in my riding back home had a by-election in February. And so I actually was able to cast my first vote since the court ruling during that February by-election.
Part of this video, the purpose of this video, is to encourage those and to inform them of course, of the right to vote, but also encourage them to vote. How did you find that whole process? Was it simple?
It's an extremely straightforward process. When you register online, it takes you through a few questionnaires, and then you register to vote. When the writ is called, when the writ is dropped, they will mail you a ballot. And then as a voter, all you need to do is look up your riding, see who the candidates are, decide who you want to vote for, and fill out your ballot, stick it back in the mail, send it back in. It couldn't be easier. It's really a great way for the voting process to work. And so I'm very glad that the Elections Canada very quickly adapted their process to allow us to vote.
You can't help but wonder if maybe they had prepared to be able to make the change just in case the ruling ruled in the favor of expats.
Yeah, and if you look at a lot of the previous chief electoral officers had been quite in favor of allowing expats the right to vote. So while the current chief electoral officers stayed quiet on the matter, there were a number of former chief electoral officers who spoke in support of our court case.
So just as a reminder, people need to first register as a Canadian living abroad.
Yes.
And once they've registered, however, just looking at the Elections Canada site, that's good forever. They don't have to re-register every time an election is called.
Correct. The only thing they would have to do is if they move their mailing address wherever they're living abroad, they would want to update that with Elections Canada so that they continue to receive ballots. But they as long as you stay in the same location, you'll stay on the international elector roll, and Elections Canada should send you a ballot when there's an election.
And just as a reminder, this is really important. Of course, we're looking at an October 21st voting date. However, there is a time limit prior to the election that you have to have registered, which is 1 week or the Tuesday before the election. So in this case, it's, I think, October 15th is when you have to have registered, and your proof of identification has to be approved.
Right, but I would strongly recommend anyone thinking about registering to just go ahead and register today. The sooner you get registered, the sooner you're in the system, and the sooner you'll get your ballot once the election is called. So there's no reason to delay. I imagine there's some way for this video to have the website addresses for people to click on, but they should go ahead and register if they haven't already, and that way you're on the list and you'll get the ballot when the election's called.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely put the links below in the description. We'll also, do you have a website as well that gives people more information?
I don't. We had a Facebook group, the Let All Canadians Vote, which continues to have updated information for anyone trying to find out about how to vote. And there was another website, another Let All Canadians Vote website, but I'm not sure if that's still being maintained or not.
Right, because all Canadians can vote. So, Jamie, thank you very much for joining me today.
My pleasure.
And again, for all Canadian expats, make sure you register to vote as quickly as possible. Follow those links below. Register, receive that ballot, and submit it on time. We're super excited that you had the opportunity to watch the video. Please hit the like, share this video with other Canadian expats around. If you're a part of another Canadian expat community, whether it be on Facebook or otherwise, please share it. Let other people know how to vote, how to register, get as many people as we can out there. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time.